We can discuss how serious this rivalry is. What was that in response to? If you want to be relevant in the WNBA, the best way you can do that is to attach your name to Caitlin Clark's. The female messiah of basketball is here, and the league has not had the sense to follow her. If they really are serious about the WNBA succeeding, the new budding rivalry that people are talking about is Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Plum. Caitlin Clark taking to social media to kind of stick the needle at Kelsey Plum, who prominently had behind her a Nike logo. We can take a look at this. Kelsey Plum is an Under Armour athlete. Caitlin Clark is a Nike athlete. And Kelsey Plum posting on her Instagram, what a weekend, standing in front of a swoosh, and Caitlin Clark not passing up the opportunity to say thank you for the Nike ad. Now, what was that in response to? Probably, many are saying it was in response to comments that Kelsey Plum made after the WNBA All-Star Game. Comments that some perceived as being a gratuitous shot at Caitlin Clark. Let's take a listen.
Well, it was a very powerful moment. We didn't, at least as players, we didn't know that was going to happen. So I think it was kind of like a genuine surprise. But the T-shirt, just United Front, was determined this morning that we had a meeting for. And, not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that. But no, we were just, we had a very...
that really needed to be mentioned.
I'm trying to make a situation light, okay? But yeah, no, I think it was just all of us getting on the same page for the game. We wanted to do something that was just united and collective, and I thought that it was a very powerful moment and got the point across, and, sometimes you don't have to say anything.
Not to tattletale. That sounds like the kind of thing that tattletales say, in my experience. But, people are reading a lot into this. She's referring to the pay us what you owe us t-shirts that we saw the players wearing this weekend. Of course, they've got their collective bargaining going on. They believe that they're worth more than they're being paid, as does every group who enters into every collective bargaining situation. So there's not really a lot of news there. But the little comment that there weren't Team Clark folks in the room when the decision was made about the shirt. Sabrina Ionescu, who was on Team Caitlin Clark, taking a little bit of gentle exception to that, and Kelsey Plum saying that she was trying to lighten the mood. So how seriously you want to take that jibe, I suppose that you can decide for yourself. A lot of people are using it to further the narrative that Kelsey Plum is Caitlin Clark's new rival. And look, however you take the comments, and I tend to take them as being in jest, I don't read a lot into it, but if you want to be relevant in the WNBA, the best way you can do that is to attach your name to Caitlin Clark's, because Kelsey Plum is a 4-time WNBA All-Star. She's a 2-time WNBA champion. She's a former first-team WNBA, all-WNBA performer. But she gets more attention by mentioning Caitlin Clark and having people arguably misconstrue the remarks. Or maybe Kelsey Plum knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew that if the name Caitlin Clark comes out of anyone's mouth who is in front of a microphone, who is a WNBA player, especially if they're a decent one, the media is going to be all over it. Colin Cowherd among those weighing in on the situation, and Colin has some hard truth to speak to the ladies of the WNBA, and let's listen.
So the T-shirts don't bother me, but why do you take a shot at the Golden Goose, Caitlin Clark? You guys were flying before she arrived on one of those airlines that made you pay for a cup of water. One of those airlines that is the planes are the color of a highlighter. Now you're flying private. Okay, if you're in a band and you're staying at the Motel 6 and you add a band member and now you're at the Ritz-Carlton, Keep your issues to yourself. All right? You went from a Motel 6 in a sketchy part of town to a Four Seasons in the shopping district. Stop talking.
You motherfuckers had Tom Bodette leaving a light on for you. Just like 2 weeks ago, how quickly we're unappreciative of the things that we have. You could argue that they've never been appreciative of Caitlin Clark. All I know is that Spirit Airlines taking a little collateral damage there. Spirit Airlines has got to be thinking, what the fuck did we do? You don't like our yellow planes? But this is the reality. The WNBA laboring in obscurity, losing money every year, no real direction has this league had. Never has there been even the light at the end of the tunnel. And then suddenly, you not only get the light at the end of the tunnel, but she's standing there like female Jesus. Come all the way to the end of the tunnel. I have arrived. All of you who have gone out and planted the seeds and laid the groundwork for this league for 3 decades, the female messiah of basketball is here, and the league has not had the fucking sense to follow her. So the optics on a lot of this stuff. So if people are going to draw conclusions about what Kelsey Plum said and attribute petty motives to it, you can certainly understand where that comes from. Kelsey Plum, D'd up Caitlin Clark full court in the All-Star Game last year. So there's all kinds of issues that we can take with the WNBA. Look, Jemele Hill, when you're talking about the WNBA, she's not going to be far behind. And Jemele Hill is bringing Brittney Griner's time in Russia into the conversation now as she talks about how this collective bargaining is going to go forward. Let's take a listen.
You want to make sure you pay them enough, at least so that they're not going overseas. What does it say about the salary structure in the WNBA that the whole reason that Brittney Griner was playing in Russia is because in Russia, that has not so good of a record of human rights, pays their women's basketball players better than they do here in America. That's the whole reason why she was there. That's why Diana Taurasi was there. That's why many of them go overseas. They go overseas to countries that have terrible human rights violations because they actually could get paid what they're worth in those countries and not in this country.
All right, so Jemele Hill talking about Brittney Griner. A lot of people are going to blow a gasket right there just for that reason. If you can get past the Brittney Griner reference, and if you can get past it being Jemele Hill saying it, she certainly has a point in terms of if you're running a first flight operation, if they really are serious about the WNBA succeeding, and we've already talked about it on this program this week, 11-year, $2+ billion media rights package. The game is changing. And you don't want your best players going overseas and playing in foreign countries, if only for the fact that you don't want somebody going over there and blowing out their ACL. If you are going to be a premier league, if you are going to say we are the NBA for women, and that's what the fucking name of the league says on it, then you do want to have a situation where these players aren't having to go and play in Europe and wherever during the off season just to try to make a little bit of money. So there is a point here to that. But sometimes when we're talking about the WNBA, it is hard for me to differentiate what people really mean and what people are just saying for attention and what people are saying for clout. Caitlin Clark says that you got to remember most of the stuff that you see on social media is fake anyway. She sat down with Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird and had this to say.
Well, I think first, you have to remember social media is just such a false perception of reality. And even for myself, you don't always realize that at times, it's not the real world. And, when you're in a position of, people are going to love you, people aren't going to like you. But I think when I show up to arenas, those are the moments that really remind me of how many people are really there supporting you and loving you. The little boys and the little girls, those are the people that are on social media caring about every decision you make or every comment you make. But also at the same time, I feel I just try to show up every single day and be myself and approach it that way and just be authentically me. And whether that's hard questions or hard moments, whatever it is, I think you kind of just take it as it goes and I always try to remind myself how lucky I am to be here and be in this position too. Like there would be so many people that would kill to be in my shoes. So, there's gonna be hard moments, but at the same time, there's been a lot of really good moments too. So that's kind of what I just try to remind myself, honestly.
So a lot of what you see on social media is fake, exaggerated. It's a funhouse mirror view of American life. I would argue oftentimes if you go out and you put your feet on the ground and you walk around your community, it usually looks a little more optimistic than what it sounds like when you're on social media. So definitely some fraudulence there. But you know what was never fake, my friends? The joy that we experienced as children whenever we could get a 18-wheeler driver to honk that fucking horn for us. Am I right? I know some of you remember this well. Remember being a kid, getting a diesel truck driver to honk at you? It was one of the greatest victories in life. Some poor son of a bitch out there taking frozen chicken from Topeka to Chattanooga, and he could make your day like an authentic fucking American hero. By God. There's only one way that you ask for. Let's get Ronnie t-shirts on camera. I'm going to the international streaming star right now, unexpectedly. Ronnie, give me your technique. Show me how you would ask for it. There it is. That's it.
You wouldn't wave
so
first?
Many times when I was a kid.
Nope.
We waved first, and then we did the honk.
Ricky, I still
you
do
waved
it.
first.
I still do
What
it,
kind
Ricky.
of Are you going to be ordering the Sydney Sweeney bath soap soon as well?
It's just not for kids, man. It's not for kids. It's awesome.
What?
You know,
do they fucking look at you with contempt and disgust when they that you're a 58-year-old man asking for some horn?
How about this one? Did you ever do this? And I vividly remember it. Is driving with your parents. Obviously, you're driving with your parents because you can't drive. Wanting them to honk the horn when you're in a tunnel. Like I remember doing that all the time. And we got the biggest thrill of having the horn honked in the tunnel because it just made this crazy sound.
Ron, when was the last time that you gave one of these to somebody?
Oh gosh, it's been forever. I mean, I probably did it telling Tyler to do it when she was little, but I haven't done it for a long time.
It's been at least a week. It's like 8 days ago is what I think.
No, it was in June. It was in June.
It was in June. Okay. All right. See, I gave you too much credit or not enough. Yeah. I'm not sure which. Ronnie, you are, of course, the international streaming star.
So people say.
That bears mentioning is what they say. Ron, Stephen A. Smith is talking about Donald Trump. Ron, Donald Trump now basically threatening the Washington Commanders that if you don't change your name back to Redskins, maybe this stadium deal in D.C. is not going to happen. And Stephen A. Smith saying that he's doing this to distract people from the Epstein files. What do you think about that?
I think Washington is a game. It's always been a game. And I think there's probably truth to that. Like there's truth to everything. I don't know if Trump actually thought to himself, oh my gosh, I got to figure out a way to get people to stop talking about Epstein. I know what I'll do. I'll make this preposterous statement. I don't actually think that that's what happened, but I mean, it's all smoke and mirrors. Everything's smoke and mirrors.
Let me just put this out here for you. Rosie O'Donnell. I'm going to take away Rosie O'Donnell's citizenship. Let's have a UFC fight at the White House. Coca-Cola is now going to have real cane sugar. The Commanders may not be able to build their stadium here if they don't change their name back to Redskins. And we're going to release the Martin Luther King FBI files.
Isn't this what you voted for?
Now,
isn't this what you voted for?
I'm just saying it, like, if he were trying to distract people from the Epstein files, and I'm not saying that's what's going on, I don't know, but if he were, it seems like he's emptying the bag lately with a lot of stuff let's just say. I'm not sure if they're going to bring back the Redskins name. Something tells me that's not going to happen. But I sure as fuck would love to see them bring this great shit back, Ron. Have a look at this fucking greatness. I asked people, what's your all-time favorite defunct food product? Name a defunct food product that you miss. And I said, I'll start by saying I would do some bad things right now for a can of roller coasters.
Dude, it's so funny that you're showing this right now. Lori and I have been watching Landman with Billy Bob Thornton. And the episode we watched last night, he actually talked about that his normal dinner when his wife wasn't there was a can of Chef Boyardee cold ravioli. Just opened the can and started eating it. And I said to Lori, I've done that many times when I was in college. Like, it's delicious. So I agree. Those roller coasters, cold ravioli in a can, delicious.
My pleasure now to welcome to the program. He is the longtime play-by-play voice of the New York Yankees, as well as the host of the Michael Kay Show on ESPN New York, 880, 1 to 3 p.m. weekdays. Michael Kay joins the show. Michael, how are you?
I'm good, Ricky. How you doing?
Doing very well. Doing very well, sir. Appreciate you joining us. We, out of the All-Star break here, we're getting into a good time of the season for baseball fans. The stakes are getting higher as we head towards August. New York Yankees right now sitting in second place, 4 games behind the Toronto Blue Jays. What are your thoughts so far on the Yankees season to this point, and where the team is right now and where they need to be to get back into first place?
Well, Ricky, this is a flawed team right now. You know, they lost yesterday to Toronto, and the left side of the infield made 2 big errors in a 4-run inning that the Blue Jays had. They lose 4-2. So the Yankees have their biggest deficit of the year so far. They're 4 games behind Toronto. They got swept 2.5 weeks ago by Toronto in 4 games. Didn't look good doing that, and they didn't look good yesterday. This is a team that has to have some reinforcements by the All-Star break. They have to get a third baseman. I think they need to get another starter, and they probably need 2 relief pitchers. So that's a lot to ask for at the trade deadline. That's a lot of prospect capital that you're going to have to chew up. And I don't think the Yankees want to give up one of their big-time prospects for a 2-month rental like Eugenio Suarez would be. So I'm sure that Brian Cashman's going to be working the phones, because the way this team is set up right now, they're going to have some trouble winning the American League East.
Michael, Aaron Judge is historical at this point. I think people are realizing this guy, he's not just an all-star. He's not just a great player. He's a historical figure in the game of baseball in terms of the talent that he brings to it. You have the pleasure of watching him play on an everyday basis. Where does he rank at this point in your mind among the great Yankees? Because I've heard people, go so far as to say he may be the greatest right-handed hitter of all time if we're talking about peak value. That's the level to which he has ascended. Where do you put him in the pantheon of Yankees greats at this point?
Well, that's always tough, Ricky, because when you're talking about the Yankees, I don't even know if Derek Jeter or Mariano Rivera could get onto their Mount Rushmore. They've had some of the greatest players in the history of the game, but he has established himself as one of the greatest right-handed hitters in history. But does he supplant, Ruth, Gehrig, DiMaggio, Berra on the Mount Rushmore? Probably not, because he's yet to win a championship. But this guy is so special. The things that he does, he's continued to get better. Usually at his age, 33, 34, you start to see a little bit of a fall down. There hasn't been that at all. He continues to get better. At the beginning of his career, Ricky, he was a guy who struck out an awful lot. Now he's cut that down. He's closed up the holes in his game. He does everything well. And this is something that fans don't necessarily care about or actually see. He's about as good a guy as you could be for a star that big. He never lords his fame over you. He treats everybody great. I usually judge people by the way they treat children, how I see them interact with children. He's amazing that way, just amazing. And it's not when the cameras are on or people are watching him. It's in quiet moments when there's a kid there and he gets down on his knees so he can look the kid right in the eye. He's special from top to bottom and a great representative for the Yankees and really a great face for baseball as well.
Yeah, no question about it. Between Judge and Ohtani, you've got two, who better really than those guys? You couldn't draw it up better if you were trying to cast it for a movie. Really, you obviously have seen plenty of Ohtani, Michael. A little too much Ohtani, perhaps. How do you put into focus what this guy's doing? Because obviously you were born and raised in the Bronx. You're such a great story yourself, being the voice of the Yankees, a Bronx kid. You know the history of the Yankees franchise like few others. I never thought that we would see a player come along that we could put in the same sentence with Babe Ruth when we're talking about what Ruth was able to do. But Ohtani pitching and hitting simultaneously in a way that even Ruth did not. How much do you marvel every time you see what this guy's doing? Because he's launching home runs, he can steal 50 bases, he can hit 50 homers, he can throw a 102 mile an hour pitch with movement. Have you ever encountered anything like it?
No, and this will be sacrilege to Yankee fans, but you actually hit on it, Ricky. He's doing things that Babe Ruth never did. Babe Ruth was a pitcher with the Red Sox who occasionally hit, and then he was a hitter at the beginning with the Yankees who very, very occasionally pitched. But to do both in one season at this level, that's never been done before by anybody. So, the last year or so, Ohtani's just been a hitter, and he's still one of the best players in baseball. Now, when you add the pitching to that, that's what pushes him, above the Judges and the Sotos and players like that, because nobody can do anything like that because you're a top flight pitcher and you're an otherworldly hitter. So the Dodgers are, in essence, getting two great players for the price of one. And I never thought I'd say this, but a guy who makes $70 million a year, $2 million actually this year, 68 in the future, he's underpaid. The money that he makes for the Dodgers, the value that he has for that franchise, the value that he has for Major League Baseball, he's actually underpaid. That's how good he is. Now, is he going to get back to the pitcher that he once was? Time will tell. The Dodgers are certainly slow rolling this. I think they're trying to get him ready for the postseason because one of the things they need, despite having that high payroll, they need starting pitching because they simply have everybody on the IL. But if Ohtani could be a full-fledged starter by the time the postseason starts, he could help them win their second straight title.
Yeah, you're right about that pitching staff. It's a mash unit
Yep.
that they have over there. Let's talk about your story, Michael. Tell me, how did it come to be? Because growing up in the Bronx, here you are now, all the years that you've spent in the booth for the New York Yankees. How much of a dream come true has it been, and where did you see yourself going when you were a kid? What were your aspirations?
Well, I grew up about 10 to 12 minutes away from Yankee Stadium in the Southeast Bronx, and I was a very rational kid, Ricky, because I realized I'm not good enough to play. I'm afraid of getting hit with the baseball. But I wanted to be involved with the Yankees in some way. So I declared to my parents when I was 9 years old that I wanted to be the Yankee announcer. And God bless them. They didn't discourage me. They always said, well, make sure you have a fallback. Because what is that, like a 1 in a million shot? That might even be underselling it just a little bit. But they said, try to do whatever you want to do. If that's your dream, then try for it. But have something to fall back on. So that's what I wanted to be since I was 9 years old. But when I went to Fordham University, I had an accent like Vinnie Barbarino. So I wasn't going to be getting on any airs anytime soon. So I knew that I had to move to the middle of the country, work my way back, get rid of the accent. So I became a writer for the New York Post. And I said, well, if I can't be the Yankee announcer, maybe I'll just cover the Yankees. And I ended up getting the Yankee beat on the Post. And then I went to the Daily News and I got the Yankee beat there. And I always ended up being the rain delay guest because I was the writer that could talk a lot. And then when the job opened next to John Sterling, they said, would I be interested in applying? And I said, yeah, never thinking I had a chance. And they ended up having like 5,000 or more applicants. And for somehow, some way, I was the last man standing. So I did 10 years on the radio with John Sterling. And then when they started the Yes Network, they hired me as the head play-by-play guy. So amazingly enough, that was 24 years ago. So 34 years in the Yankee booth. I can't even believe it to this day. And one thing I always make a point of doing, every time I walk into that booth at Yankee Stadium, I look around and I think, just remember, you big-headed freak, how lucky you are. So I know how lucky I am.
Well, who were your heroes? Who were the guys back in the day growing up that were the announcers that made the greatest impression on you? And were there any guys that you feel like you kind of took little bits and pieces of their style when you were constructing who Michael Kay is as a broadcaster?
Well, and not to sound corny, my heroes were my parents. They didn't have much money, but me and my sister really, they did everything they could to give us what we needed to be successful. They pushed us academically. In terms of broadcasting, I always make this joke that, there were 4 male voices heard in my house, and that was Phil Rizzuto, Frank Messer, and Bill White, and my father. So, I mean, there were years when I was a kid that I watched or listened to every single Yankee game. So those guys, whether it was through osmosis or not, they certainly impacted the way I broadcast. And if you're growing up in New York, Ricky, Marv Albert's going to be a big part of what you listen to as you're a kid, and you listen to the Knicks, and then even nationally as well. So you incorporate all of those things, but probably the biggest influence, and if you just listen to simple nuances that I have on the air, probably came from John Sterling. Sitting next to him for 10 years, some of his inflections and things like that. I certainly don't have the voice that he had, but I saw the way his pacing and his rhythm and stuff like that, and that probably has had an influence as well.
Michael, look, I'm the Super 70s sports guy, but I will admit I'm a little bit young for it. I probably should have been the 80s guy because I was born in 71. So I'm claiming that decade for myself, even though my memories of it only really kick in the late 70s. You've got a few years on me, and you were a great age to really experience the 70s in a way that I kind of wish that I could have. Take me back to being a kid growing up, because I know that you have followed Super 70s for a long time and you understand very well the kind of stuff that I do, and I know it resonates with you. Take me back to when you were, 13, 14, 15 years old. What kind of stuff were you into?
Well, it's funny because I was born in 61, so I'm 10 years older than you, and I really am a child of the 70s more so than the 60s. And even to this day, Ricky, it's kind of a joke amongst my friends. My music is 70s music. I mean, when I'm in the car, it's Sirius XM 70s on 7. If I'm driving to Boston to do a Yankee Red Sox game, I'm listening to 70s music the whole way. At my wedding, Ricky, I joined the band to sing Build Me Up Buttercup. I like the Partridge Family. I like the Archies. I like things like that. I love the music. I love the television shows during that time. I really am a product of the 70s. And I know a lot of people look down on the 70s at it. What really happened to the 70s that moved the needle? It moved my needle somehow. All my sensibilities are because of, shows like Welcome Back, Kotter and things like that. I watched television relentlessly in the 70s. So yeah, definitely a product of that decade. And to this day, just love everything about it. Love the music and things like that. And people look at me as kind of weird that way, but other people listen to Led Zeppelin and I listen to Sugar Sugar of the Archies. So yeah, that's me.
I appreciate it, damn it. Some people would try to tell you that that's a guilty pleasure, but I say there's no reason to feel guilt for liking Sugar Sugar by the Archies whatsoever. I'm going to stand right there with you on that one.
Beautiful.
I know that you were a Bobby Mercer guy growing up, and Michael, you so well know the athletes, those players that meant something to us when we were kids. They're always a little bit magnified in our minds, even when we grow up. I had Phil Garner on the show a couple of weeks ago, and it's just like, that's Phil fucking Garner. It's a big deal because that 10-year-old kid still remembers, We Are Family and that mustache and everything that went with it. Who were the players for you that loom a little bit larger because they meant a lot to you when you were a kid?
Well, I started really liking the Yankees, 69, 70. And, I take pride in the fact that those were the down years for them. So I'm certainly not a bandwagon jumper. So I remember the teams with Ron Bloomberg and Roy White and Bobby Mercer and Thurman Munson. That was when they started to turn. But shortstop was Gene Michael, and the third baseman was Jerry Kenny. And then Celerino Sanchez came around, Horace Clark. Those were not great teams, but I learned to root for the underdog at that point. I know for people listening right now, the Yankees, the underdog, yeah, they used to be, because after 1964 and before George Steinbrenner bought the team, they weren't very good. So, but my favorite of all time was definitely Bobby Mercer, and the fact that I got a chance to work with him in the Yes booth at the beginning of Yes was just an amazing thing for me. And Ricky, I always tell kids, be careful of meeting your idols, because a lot of times, most of the times, you're going to be disappointed, because people have a public persona and then they have a private persona, and sometimes it doesn't match up. But, meeting Bobby Mercer told me that little 9 and 10-year-old Michael Kay had really great taste. He was just the best guy that you'd ever want to meet, an incredible gentleman, just great in every way. And, just confirmed all of my feelings as a kid that was the guy that I wanted to be. When I was in Little League, I wore number 1 because Bobby Mercer wore number 1 in his first iteration with the Yankees. And then when he came back, Billy was wearing number 1 again. So Bobby wore number 2. That was even before Derek Jeter. And, getting a chance to work with him and become a friend with he and his wife, Kay, has meant the world to me. And, one of the surrealistic moments in my life, Bobby passed away at a really young age because of brain cancer at 62. And they had a memorial service down in Oklahoma. And his wife actually asked me to speak. And, if you would have told 10-year-old, 11-year-old Michael Kay that something like that would have happened, and I just stood there, at the pulpit, and I couldn't believe that I was doing this. And I wanted to make it right because I owed it to him, who made my childhood so happy and also my adulthood happy as well. So that was a moment where I couldn't believe that it was happening. But, I hope I did him honor.
Great stuff. And a great memory of Bobby Mercer. Outstanding ball player. Michael, thank you so much. Pleasure having you on. Appreciate you making some time for us this morning. And good luck to you and Booney and the New York Yankees in the second half. Y'all are my American League team. So I'm pulling for you. And I hope the nice folks in Toronto are behaving themselves as well, Michael.
They've been good so far, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And really, what do they have to complain about? They've taken 6 out of 8 from the Yankees, but you keep doing what you're doing on Super 70 Sports, and good luck with this project as well, Ricky.
Thank you, my friend. We appreciate you.